Thank you. I'm Mr. Lehner, and welcome back to Mr. Lehner's Math Extravaganza. And we're bringing you a fall episode of the Math Extravaganza today. Today we're going to take a look at fundraising, and specifically comparing our different values when doing fundraisers. So think about if you've ever had any experience with fundraisers at school or fundraisers at home. Maybe you're on a sports team where you have to sell candy to raise money for jerseys, or at school or raising money to help out another school or another area from a natural disaster. You may have some background knowledge or experience with fundraising. Let's take a look at an example problem. If we had a Hazel Green fundraiser, and each of these grades here for Hazel Green 5th and 6th, and we'll say Prairie for 7th and 8th grade, these are your fundraising goals. We'd like 5th grade to raise $130, 6th grade to raise $210, 7th grade to raise $260, and 8th grade to raise $390. We have a lot of information there. We can make a lot of comparisons based off this information that's up on our chart. One thing you could say is that the 7th grade has raised double what the 5th grade has raised. So let's look at 7th and 5th. The 5th grade raised 130 and the 7th grade raised 260. So you're saying that the 7th grade has raised double what the 5th grade has raised. I know that's true because if I take $130, multiply that by 2, it equals $260. So I just made a comparison between the 5th grade and the 7th grade, and I was using multiplication to make that comparison. That's just one thing I could focus on. Let's take a look at another. I could say for every $1 the 5th grade raises, the 7th grade raises $2. And that's a key phrase there, for every. You might be familiar with that in math. So if I'm saying for every $1 the 5th grade raises, the 7th grade raises $2, well, you just came up with a ratio and a fraction. I know ratios and fractions, super tough, super hard, super scary. Oh, that doesn't look so bad, does it? Not too bad. You just did a 1 to 2, a 1 to 2 ratio, so that every $1 they have, they raise 2. You just used a fraction. No problem at all. Let's take a look at a third example here. I've put a chart up on the side here. We're going to focus on the 8th graders now. The 8th graders have raised $390. Well, I've broken this up into thirds. So I've made this a fraction here, and I kind of drew out a little visual. So if I was to divide 390 by 3, that would leave me with 130. So 1/3 of 390 is 130. 2/3 of 390 is 260. And 3/3 of 390 is 390. Again, that's going to equal your full value. So let's take a look at this picture here. This might help you for your visual learners out there that like to use pictures. Well, if I know that 8th grade raised 390, I know that 5th grade raised 130. So 5th grade, if they've only raised 130, they've raised 1/3 of what the 8th graders raised. Because 1/3 of 390 is 130. So I just used a diagram and a picture and a fraction to compare now. Let's take a look at a second comparison. You might notice this at home. Well, if the 5th grade raised 1/3 what the 8th grade raised, I know that the 7th graders raised 2/3 what the 8th grade raised, because 2/3 of 390, if I have 2/3, 2 to the 3 here, 130 would be 260, so 2/3 of 390 is 260. So I could say that the 7th grade has raised 2/3 what the 8th graders have raised. So we just made 4 different comparisons using multiplication, using ratios and addition, using a diagram and a chart here, and then the best part, the fractions, 2/3, 1/3. We broke up our total into different portions to help us make some comparison and some connections. When working with fractions, a lot of times it might be helpful to draw out a little diagram for yourself to make it a little bit easier to understand. Let's take a look at a real life situation. Janet and Isabel, they're collecting box tops for Hazel Green. Great students, helping out with the community here. Janet's goal is to collect 42 box tops. Isabel's goal is to collect 56 box tops. If both Janet and Isabel reach their goal, what fraction of Isabel's goal does Janet collect? So, what I want you to do is get out that paper get out that pencil and see if you can solve this problem. Remember, think about what you know in the problem and what the problem is asking you. Then come up with a method to solve the problem and think, does my answer make sense? Is it reasonable? Go ahead and pause the video and we'll see how you do. Okay, the first step when solving a problem is basically, what do I know? Well, I know that Janet is going to collect 42 box tops and Isabel is going to collect 56 box tops. I know that the question wants to know what fraction of Isabel's goal does Janet collect? How could I show that? Well, I know that Janet collected 42 box tops and Isabel collected 56, so it would be 42 of 56. That's what Janet did. That would be the fraction. She collected 42 and Isabel collected 56, so it's 42 over 56. Another way I could look at it is that, well, 42 is out of 56 were collected by Janet. You can simplify that fraction down to 3/4 if I were to divide that out. Well, I know that 3/4 is the same as 75%. So I could say another thing is that Janet collected 75% of what Isabel collected. So again, I took a ratio there in my fraction, turned it into a percent, comparing the number of box tops they came up with. Obviously then, when looking at Isabel, if she collected 56 box tops out of 56 box tops, well, she collected 100% of her goal. She made her goal. But when comparing Janet and Isabel, it would be about a 75% difference, or 42 out of 56, or if you simplify it, 3/4. Again, when working with problems like this, take your time, check your work, make sure you know those math facts to help you out with these, and then make sure, does my answer make sense? Does that look like 75% of hers? Yes. I didn't say 10% or 25%. It wouldn't be reasonable. My answer makes sense. I know that I'm correct. Thank you for tuning in to Miscellaneous Math Extravaganza. As always, we'll see you next time.